Lieutenant Rose pressed her hand against the wound in her side, watching as purple blood seeped between her fingers. The crash had thrown her against the ship's control panel, and now she sat in the smoking wreckage of her scout vessel, surrounded by the strange purple trees of this unexplored world. She tried to move her lower right arm to reach the emergency beacon, but pain shot through her body. 2 of her 4 arms were injured, making it difficult to do anything useful. The bitter taste of copper filled her mouth. This planet's atmosphere was rich with it, toxic to her kind. She needed to get her environment suit sealed again, but the crash had torn a large gash in the fabric. Status report. She whispered to her ship's computer, her voice raspy. Only static answered. The communication system was dead, just like everything else in the ship except for the dim emergency lights that cast an eerie red glow through the smoke-filled cabin. Rose closed her inner eyelids to protect against the stinging smoke while keeping her outer ones open to watch for danger. The memory of the attack played in her mind. Their routine patrol mission had turned into chaos when the pirates appeared from behind the planet's largest moon. Their ships were old but heavily modified, perfect for ambushing military vessels. Scatter and regroup at Point Beta, Captain Marr had ordered over the comm system. Rose's scout ship had taken a direct hit to the engines. As she spiraled toward the planet's surface, she had watched her squadron disappear into hyperspace, leaving her behind. They had followed protocol. Better to lose 1 soldier than risk the entire squad to a pirate fleet. The sound of creaking metal brought her attention back to the present. The ship's hull was cooling, contracting as the heat from re-entry dissipated. Rose tried to stand but collapsed back into her pilot's seat. The copper poisoning was starting to affect her system. Her blue skin had already begun to take on a sickly gray tone. She reached for her medical kit with her 1 good upper arm, but found only empty space. The kit had been thrown somewhere during the crash, probably beneath the crushed sections of the cabin. Without those medicines, she had maybe 6 hours before the copper in the atmosphere would start shutting down her organs. A sound from outside made her freeze. Something was moving through the forest, pushing past the strange purple vegetation. Rose grabbed her service pistol, holding it steady despite her shaking hands. The Alliance had limited data on this planet's wildlife. There could be predators. More rustling. Closer now. Rose aimed her weapon at the ship's broken viewport. If she was going to die here, she would go down fighting like a proper Alliance officer. Her training kicked in as she controlled her breathing, waiting for whatever was approaching to show itself. Through the shattered viewport, she caught glimpses of movement between the trees. The local sun, smaller and redder than what she was used to, had started to set, making it harder to see clearly. But there was definitely something out there, something big. Rose's vision began to blur. The copper poisoning was getting worse. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her sight. The emergency beacon lay broken near her feet, its internal parts scattered across the cabin floor. Even if she could reach it, she didn't have enough working arms to repair it. The rustling stopped. Rose held her breath, finger tight on the trigger. A shadow fell across the broken viewport, and she caught a glimpse of something she had never expected to see on an unexplored world. A bipedal figure carrying what looked like scientific equipment. Her vision darkened at the edges as the copper poisoning grew worse. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was a human face, peering into her ship with an expression of surprise and concern. Humans weren't supposed to be on this planet. Humans weren't supposed to be this far out in space at all. Then darkness took her, and Lieutenant Rose slipped into unconsciousness, not knowing if this unexpected encounter would mean her salvation or her doom. Tom Miller had seen many strange things during his 3 years studying alien plants on this remote world, but finding a crashed spaceship was a first. The botanist approached carefully, his handheld scanner showing no signs of radiation or dangerous chemicals from the wreck. 20 years of human space exploration had taught everyone to be careful around unknown technology. The ship's design was sleek and advanced, nothing like the bulky human vessels he was used to. Smoke still rose from its damaged hull, and pieces of strange metal were scattered across the purple forest floor. His scanner beeped, detecting a life form inside. "Hello," he called out, moving closer to the broken viewport. "Is anyone alive in there?" Through the shattered glass, he saw something that made him catch his breath. An alien. She was slumped in what looked like a pilot's seat, her blue skin now a sickly gray. 4 arms hung limply at her sides, and purple blood stained her torn uniform. Tom had heard stories about the blue-skinned people of the Stellar Alliance, but he'd never seen one in person. They usually avoided human-explored space. His medical scanner showed her life signs were failing fast. Tom didn't hesitate. Helping people in need was a core human value, no matter what species they were. He found the ship's emergency release and pulled hard, forcing the damaged door open with a screech of metal. The inside of the ship was a mess. Broken equipment and twisted metal everywhere, and a strong smell of burned electronics filled the air. Tom checked his scanner again and frowned at the readings. The atmosphere was heavy with copper particles, harmless to humans, but toxic to several known alien species. "Don't worry," he said to the unconscious alien, knowing she couldn't hear him. "I'll get you out of here." Moving carefully in the cramped space, Tom checked her injuries. 2 of her arms were clearly broken, and she had a nasty wound in her side. But the biggest problem was the copper poisoning. His scanner showed it was already affecting her vital organs. He reached for his medical kit, then stopped. Most of his medicines were designed for humans. They might do more harm than good. But leaving her here wasn't an option. His research outpost was only 2 kilometers away, and it had better medical equipment. "I hope you don't mind being carried," Tom said, carefully unbuckling her from the pilot's seat. He was surprised at how light she was, probably because her species evolved on a low-gravity world. As he lifted her, one of her eyes flickered open briefly, showing a strange double-eyelid structure before closing again. The trek back to his outpost wasn't easy. The forest's purple vegetation grew thick and tangled, and he had to move slowly to avoid jostling her injuries. His scanner kept beeping warnings about her declining condition. Twice he had to stop and check that she was still breathing. Finally, the research outpost came into view, a simple collection of prefab buildings surrounded by experimental gardens. Tom hurried to the medical bay, gently placing the alien officer on the examination table. The outpost's computer immediately began scanning her. "Warning," the computer announced. "Patient species unknown. Medical database insufficient for full treatment." "Then we'll have to improvise," Tom muttered, pulling up everything he knew about copper poisoning in alien species. He had basic antitoxin treatments and some universal blood substitutes. It wouldn't be perfect, but it might be enough to keep her alive. As he prepared the first treatment, the alien officer stirred slightly. Her eyes opened, all 4 of them, and focused on him. There was fear there and confusion, but also a spark of determination. She tried to speak, but couldn't manage more than a weak cough. "Easy now," Tom said in his most reassuring voice. "You're safe here. I'm going to help you, but you need to trust me. Can you do that?" She stared at him for a long moment, clearly struggling with the decision. Then, very slightly, she nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tom smiled and began his work, hoping his human medicines would be enough to save his unexpected patient. The first thing Rose noticed when she woke up was that she could breathe more easily. The bitter copper taste in her mouth was gone, replaced by clean, filtered air. She opened all 4 eyes slowly, taking in her surroundings. The room was simple but clean, filled with a mix of medical equipment and what looked like gardening tools. Tom sat nearby, studying readings on a medical screen. He had rigged up an air filtration system around her bed, using what appeared to be parts from plant growth chambers. It wasn't elegant, but it worked, keeping the copper-heavy air away from her. "You're creative for a primitive species," Rose said weakly, her translator device still functioning despite her other injuries. Tom turned to her with a slight smile. "Primitive is relative. We humans prefer the term resourceful." He held up a medical scanner. "How's the pain?" Rose tried moving her arms. The two broken ones were carefully splinted with what looked like modified plant support rods. Better, she admitted reluctantly. What did you use to treat the copper poisoning? A combination of things, Tom explained, checking her vital signs. Some universal antitoxin treatments, modified plant filters, and a few tricks I learned studying local vegetation. These purple trees actually process copper in an interesting way. I used their filtering properties to help clean your blood. Rose stared at him in surprise. The Alliance had some of the best medical technology in known space, but here was this human, solving complex medical problems with plants and improvised equipment. It went against everything she'd been taught about humans. Why did you help me? She asked. Our peoples barely have contact. The Alliance doesn't even share technology with humans. Tom checked one of her bandages before answering. Because you needed help. It's that simple. He paused, then added, though I wouldn't mind learning more about your ship's propulsion system. Despite herself, Rose let out a small laugh, which quickly turned into a cough. Tom quickly adjusted something on the filtration system, and her breathing eased again. The pirates will come looking for the crash site, Rose warned. You should leave me and save yourself. Already thought of that, Tom said, pointing to a screen showing the surrounding forest. I set up some basic sensors after I found you. They're not military grade, but they'll warn us if anyone approaches. And I've camouflaged the outpost with local vegetation. Rose tried to sit up, but Tom gently pushed her back down with a firm hand. You've got 3 broken ribs along with everything else. Moving isn't a good idea right now. You seem to know a lot about my species' anatomy, Rose observed suspiciously. Actually, I'm learning as I go, Tom admitted. The scanner helps, and I've been studying cynobiology as a hobby. When you work alone on an alien world, it pays to know a little bit of everything. A beeping sound came from one of the machines. Tom checked it and nodded with satisfaction. Your blood toxin levels are dropping. The treatment's working. Rose watched as he adjusted various pieces of equipment. His movements were efficient but careful, showing both knowledge and respect for the technology he worked with. It was nothing like the clumsy, aggressive humans described in Alliance reports. I was taught that humans were dangerous, she said quietly. Unpredictable. That's why the Alliance keeps its distance. Tom checked another reading before responding. We can be dangerous when we need to be, but we can also be helpful, innovative, and kind, just like any other species, I suppose. He looked at her with genuine curiosity. And what about your people? All I know comes from scattered reports and rumors. Before Rose could answer, an alarm sounded from the sensor display. Tom quickly moved to check it, his expression growing serious. We have visitors, he said grimly. 3 ships coming down through the atmosphere. He showed her the readings. Are these your pirates? Rose looked at the sensor data and felt her heart sink. Yes, she whispered. They'd found us. As the pirate ships descended through the atmosphere, Tom quickly dimmed all lights in the outpost. Rose watched him move with purpose, shutting down any equipment that might give off detectable energy signatures. For someone without military training, he seemed to know exactly what to do. The trees will help mask our heat signature, Tom explained, pointing to the dense purple canopy above them. These plants absorb thermal energy like nothing I've ever seen before. That's partly why I built the outpost here. Rose tried to focus past her pain. The pirates have thermal scanners, motion detectors, and energy trace readers. They're scavengers. They find crashed ships and strip them for parts. And what do they do with survivors? Tom asked, though his grim expression suggested he already knew the answer. They don't usually deal with survivors, Rose said quietly. Tom nodded, then began pulling equipment from various storage units. Well, they haven't met a stubborn human botanist before. He laid out several items on a table, some basic tools, chemical compounds, and what looked like plant samples. Rose watched him curiously. What are you doing? Making use of local resources, Tom replied, mixing something in a container. These purple trees aren't just good at absorbing heat. Their sap is highly acidic when exposed to air. The pirates might have fancy scanners, but I bet they don't know much about the local plant life. As he worked, Rose found herself studying him more closely. His movements were precise but quick, showing both knowledge and adaptability. He had none of the clumsy overconfidence she'd been taught to expect from humans. In the Alliance, she said, wincing as she adjusted her position, we spend years developing specialized tools for every situation. But you humans, you just take what's available and make it work. Tom smiled while continuing his work. That's because we had to solve problems on Earth long before we had advanced technology. We learned to use what nature gave us. He held up a vial of purple liquid. Speaking of which, how are you feeling? Strong enough to move if we need to. Rose did a quick assessment of her condition. The copper poisoning had largely cleared from her system, thanks to Tom's improvised treatments. Her broken arms were still unusable, but her other two arms were functional. I can move, she said, though fighting might be difficult. Fighting should be our last resort, Tom said, checking the sensor readings again. The pirates are spreading out, probably looking for the crash site first. We have maybe an hour before they find it, and start widening their search. He brought over some water and helped Rose drink. The simple act of kindness made her think about how wrong the Alliance's assessment of humans had been. Yes, they were capable of violence, but they were equally capable of compassion and ingenuity. Tell me about Earth, Rose said, partly to distract herself from the pain, partly out of genuine curiosity. We have so little information about your homeworld in our databases. Tom's eyes lit up as he continued his preparations. Earth is diverse. We have deserts hotter than this planet's days, and poles colder than space, oceans deeper than some planets are wide. Maybe that's why we adapt so well to other worlds. We're used to dealing with extreme conditions. A distant explosion made them both fall silent. The pirates had likely found her crashed ship. They'll be heading this way soon, Rose said, trying to sit up straighter. You should leave me. Take your research and go. I'm still too weak to travel far, and I'll only slow you down. Tom looked at her with determination in his eyes. That's not how we do things on Earth. We don't leave people behind, no matter what species they are. He finished packing various containers with the purple sap and other materials he prepared. Besides, I have a plan. It's not a very elegant one, but let me guess, Rose interrupted, a slight smile forming on her face. It's human-style problem-solving. Exactly, Tom grinned, checking his homemade traps one last time. Now let me tell you what we're going to do about our unwanted visitors. The pirates' voices echoed through the purple forest, growing closer with each passing minute. From their hiding spot in a concealed storage room, Tom and Rose watched the sensor display showing multiple heat signatures approaching the outpost. 7 of them, Rose whispered, using her good arms to steady herself against the wall. Probably split into 3 teams. Standard pirate tactics. She glanced at Tom's makeshift defenses with concern. Are you sure about this plan? Tom finished connecting the last pressure sensor to his network of traps. Not entirely, he admitted with a slight smile. But sometimes the best plans are the simple ones. He pointed to different areas around the outpost on his display. I've set up 3 layers of defense using what we have. Rose watched as he pulled up a basic map on his tablet. Red dots showed the pirates' positions, now moving through Tom's first ring of defenses. The leading group stopped suddenly, and Rose heard muffled cursing in the pirates' common language. What did they find? She asked. Concentrated tree sap, Tom explained. When exposed to air, it becomes extremely sticky and starts smoking. They'll think it's some kind of security system. He tapped another section of the map. That should make them more cautious and force them to take the path we want. Sure enough, the pirate teams regrouped and began moving more slowly, following the only clear path, exactly where Tom wanted them to go. Rose had to admit, It was clever. The pirates would be looking for high-tech defenses, not natural hazards. "Ship's empty," a gruff voice called from outside. "But the tracks lead this way." Someone survived. "Find them," another voice commanded. "The Alliance pays well for recovered officers, dead or alive." Tom checked his makeshift security cameras, simple devices he'd adapted from his plant monitoring equipment. The pirates were heavily armed, wearing mismatched armor cobbled together from different sources. They moved with the confidence of experienced killers. "They're about to hit the second layer," Tom whispered. Right on cue, several pirates triggered the pressure plates Tom had hidden under the forest debris. Capsules of compressed air burst upward, spraying them with a fine mist of purple tree sap mixed with other local plants. "What is this?" one pirate yelled, trying to wipe the substance off his mask. "Some kind of acid." "Not acid," Tom said quietly, watching with satisfaction. "But those plants I mixed and cause intense itching in most species should be taking effect right about." The pirates began scratching frantically at their exposed skin, their disciplined formation breaking down as the natural irritant took effect. Two of them stumbled into more of Tom's traps, triggering another round of plant-based defenses. "Clever," Rose commented, genuinely impressed. "You're using their protective gear against them. The more they sweat inside their suits, the worse the itching gets." Tom nodded. "On Earth, some of our most effective defensive techniques came from understanding how nature already handles threats." He checked the sensors again. "But they're still coming. These are just delaying tactics." The pirate leader's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough. It's just trees and tricks. Burn it all down. Find that officer." Rose tensed as she saw the pirates pull out plasma torches. "They're going to destroy the whole outpost, all your research." "Let them try," Tom said calmly, though his hands tightened on his tablet. "Those trees don't burn easily, and fire is exactly what we need for the third layer of defense to work." The pirates began advancing again, plasma torches cutting through the underbrush. But as the heat increased, something unexpected happened. The purple trees around them began to react, their branches swaying despite the lack of wind. "The local plants evolved to defend themselves against fire," Tom explained, watching the pirates' confusion. "When exposed to high temperatures, they release a special kind of spore, harmless to humans. But..." A fine purple mist began descending from the canopy above the pirates. Several of them started coughing and staggering. "Their masks won't help," Tom continued. "The spores are small enough to get through standard filters. They'll be disoriented for hours." Rose stared at the human with new respect. Without using a single energy weapon or piece of advanced technology, he had effectively neutralized a group of dangerous pirates using only his knowledge of local plant life. But her relief was short-lived as a new alarm sounded on the sensor display. "Tom," she said urgently, pointing to the screen, "we have another problem. A much bigger one." The massive pirate dropship descended through the purple canopy, its engines burning away the treetops. Unlike the scattered pirates below, this was a real military threat. A converted Alliance warship, bristling with weapons. "That's the Red Claw," Rose said, her voice tight with recognition. "Their flagship. The captain never comes planetside unless..." She didn't finish the sentence. Tom quickly checked his tablet's readings. "My plant defenses won't work against that thing. Any ideas?" Before Rose could answer, a booming voice echoed from the dropship's speakers. "Attention Alliance officer and human helper. This is Captain Dax of the Red Claw. Your little tricks may work on my ground teams, but they won't help you now. Surrender, and I'll consider making your deaths quick." Tom looked around the storage room, his eyes landing on his research equipment. "How good are their ship's sensors?" "Military grade," Rose replied, "but modified for pirate use. They focus on finding valuable materials and energy signatures." She watched as Tom began quickly connecting pieces of equipment together. "What are you thinking?" "That sometimes the best way to hide something is to blind the person looking for it." His hands moved fast, repurposing his botanical scanning equipment. Your ship's engines still have power, right? Rose nodded. Emergency systems should be running, but the pirates will be guarding it now. Perfect, Tom said, finishing his work. He held up what looked like a makeshift transmitter. Because we're going to give them exactly what they're looking for, just not where they expect it. Outside, the dropship's weapons powered up with an ominous hum. The disoriented ground teams were retreating, still coughing from the plant spores. Final warning, Captain Dax announced. Surrender now, or we start destroying this forest section by section. Tom handed Rose a small device. When I give the signal, press this. It will send a power surge through your ship's emergency systems. He held up his own modified equipment, and I'll use this to amplify and redirect the energy signature. Understanding dawned in Rose's eyes. You're going to make them think we're somewhere else. Humans call it a shell game, Tom grinned. Now let's give them a target they can't resist. The first explosion rocked the forest as the dropship began its systematic destruction. Tom waited until the third blast, then nodded to Rose. Now. Rose pressed the device. At the same instant, Tom activated his modified transmitter. The effect was immediate. His equipment took the power surge from Rose's crashed ship and reflected it, making it appear like a massive energy spike several kilometers away. Energy signature detected. They heard one of the pirates shout, "Massive power source, bearing 270. That's impossible," Captain Dax's voice crackled. That reading is bigger than... Wait. Is that Alliance technology? All units converge on that location. Whatever they're hiding, I want it. The dropship's engines roared as it turned toward the false signal. The remaining ground forces stumbled through the forest in the same direction, still affected by the plant spores. They took the bait, Rose said, watching them go. But they'll realize it's a trick soon. They won't find anything there except more of those purple trees, Tom said, already gathering essential supplies. And a lot more of those spore-releasing plants. But you're right. We need to move. Can you walk? Rose managed to stand, using her good arms for balance. I think so. But where can we go? They'll keep searching. Tom smiled, pointing to his tablet. Remember how I said these trees absorb heat? There's a whole grove of them 3 kilometers south. The temperature difference creates underground caves. My research station has a hidden backup lab there. We can hold out until help arrives. If help arrives, Rose corrected. As if in answer, her Alliance emergency beacon suddenly chirped to life. Tom's power surge had inadvertently recharged it. A string of coordinates scrolled across its display. Looks like your rescue team finally got their act together, Tom said, helping her toward the door. But we still need to survive until they get here. Ready for another hike through the purple forest? Rose looked at the human who had saved her life, challenged everything she thought she knew about his species, and was still fighting to protect her. Ready, she said firmly. Lead the way. Behind them, the pirate dropship's weapons fire lit up the wrong section of forest, as Tom's deception continued to work its magic. The Alliance rescue ships descended through the atmosphere in perfect formation, their advanced engines humming quietly compared to the pirates' noisy vessels. From their hiding place in the underground cave lab, Tom and Rose watched the events unfold on his adapted sensor display. 3 heavy cruisers, Rose said with obvious relief. They must have gotten my beacon's signal. The pirates won't stand a chance. Above ground, the pirate dropship tried to escape, but the Alliance vessels had already locked on. A brief exchange of weapons fire lit up the sky, ending with the Red Claw's engines disabled. The remaining pirate ground forces surrendered quickly after that. Attention Alliance officer Lieutenant Rose. A familiar voice came through her repaired communicator. This is Captain March. We've secured the area. What's your status? Rose looked at Tom before answering. This was the same captain who had left her behind during the initial attack. Protocol dictated she shouldn't mention the humans' involvement. Unofficial contact with primitive species was against regulations. But Rose had learned a lot about regulations and what really mattered in the past day. "This is Lieutenant Rose," she responded clearly. "I'm alive thanks to a human botanist named Tom Miller. Request immediate medical evacuation for both of us. And sir, you'll want to hear the full story of what happened here." 2 hours later, Rose sat in the Alliance cruiser's medical bay, her injuries properly treated. Through the observation window, she could see Tom talking with Captain Marr and several other officers. They were examining his tablet, showing the creative defenses he had engineered. The human used plant life as a weapon. One of the medical officers asked Rose, checking her newly repaired arms. "He used knowledge as a weapon," Rose corrected. "Understanding of the environment, ability to adapt, and willingness to help someone in need. Everything we've been wrong about regarding humans." The ship's intercom announced they were ready to depart. A junior officer entered the medical bay. "The human has been debriefed. Protocol states we should wipe his memory of this encounter, and—" "No," Rose said firmly, standing despite the doctor's protests. "I need to speak with the captain immediately." She found Captain Marr still talking with Tom in the briefing room. The human was explaining how he had modified simple botanical research equipment to fool military-grade sensors. "Sir," Rose interrupted, "I wish to make a formal recommendation to the Alliance Council." The captain nodded, looking somewhat uncomfortable about his earlier decision to abandon her. "Go ahead, Lieutenant. I recommend we establish official diplomatic relations with Earth," she said, "not because of their technology level, but because of their potential, their adaptability, she looked at Tom, their humanity." "That's a significant recommendation," Captain Marr said slowly. "The Council has always voted against closer ties with Earth." "Then perhaps the Council needs to see things from a different perspective," Rose replied. "The pirates had superior technology, weapons, and numbers, but they were defeated by a human using plants and improvised tools. Imagine what we could learn from each other as allies instead of keeping our distance." Tom spoke up. "We humans have a saying. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to reach out." He smiled at Rose. "Even if it means reaching out to someone very different from yourself." Captain Marr was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I'll support your recommendation, Lieutenant. Your experience here will make a compelling case." He turned to Tom. "And you, Mr. Miller, would you be willing to continue your research here, but now with Alliance support? We could learn much from your unique approach to problem solving." "I'd like that," Tom said, "though I have one condition." He glanced at Rose. "I'd request that Lieutenant Rose be assigned as the Alliance liaison for this project. She's already proven she can adapt to human methods." Rose felt her heart warm at his words. "I would be honored to serve as liaison," she said. "After all, someone needs to keep an eye on what other tricks you might come up with using these purple trees." As the Alliance ships prepared to leave, carrying both the captured pirates and plans for a new future of cooperation, Rose looked out at the purple forest below. She had come to this planet as a wounded soldier, expecting to die alone. Instead, she had found something far more valuable. Proof that the greatest strength any species could have was the ability to trust, learn, and grow together. And it had all started because a human had chosen to save her.